This is Shifting Our Schools, episode 98, a census, media use by tweens and teens.
Listen up, educators. Are you looking to take your classroom to the next level? The technological shift in education is happening right now. If you're looking to integrate technology into your classroom, you're in the right place. Welcome to Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. It's so great to be back with you all as I find myself this week in Moses Lake, Washington. At the end of 3 weeks on the road here in the state of Washington, I've been working with 6 different school districts in that time, most for multiple days, around redefining teaching and learning in the era of one-to-one computing and the internet. In fact, today while I'm recording this on October 29th, it is the 50th anniversary of the internet. How crazy is that? The internet is 50 years old. Not the internet as we knew it. This was the first time a message was ever sent between 2 computers, but still pretty incredible to think about that we've been having this type of technology for 50 years. My big takeaway over these last 3 weeks is that we need to continue to try and understand this current generation that is in our schools. We need to understand that they are different from us. They are different from any generation ever. So yeah, your classroom management strategies from years past might not work. We need to understand that how they are used to learning may not match with how we're used to teaching. They are, for better or for worse, a media first generation. We have to accept that. We have to accept that they are being raised in a world where we are surrounded by media, not text, and it is having an effect on how they live and how they learn. And we have to accept the facts that are this generation. That's exactly what today's talk is about. I'm excited to announce that Chris Butler from the Project-Based Awesomeness podcast is joining Shifting Our Schools as a co-host. You can hear Chris in episode 41 here on Shifting Our Schools, and now you'll be hearing from him even more as he joins me in interviewing other educators. So welcome, Chris, to Shifting Our Schools, and we're excited to have you join us here. Today we discuss the just released Common Sense Media Census, media use by tweens and teens, a census that Common Sense last did in 2015 and allows us to compare the growth of this generation's use of media over the past 4 years. I highly recommend reading this census for yourself, especially if you are a coach, a principal, or a school leader, or in a leadership role. I think there's so much in here that you could bring back to your staff or to your team. It really is a fantastic look at the growth and use of media today from this generation. I think there's a lot in here to unpack. You can get it by signing up for a Common Sense Media account and download the census for yourself. It's free at the link provided in the show notes. So in the show notes, there'll be a link. If you sign up for an account or you already have a Common Sense Media account, you can download the census for free and go through it. I personally haven't gone through it all, but today in this episode of Shifting Our Schools, Chris and I had literally just got the census. We just downloaded the PDF, and so you're going to hear us going through and kind of first thoughts off the top of our head as we're going through the key findings on this census. I'm looking forward to digging into it even more, as there's I think, a lot in here to unpack that I still understand. But this is kind of a first look of our thoughts on the 12 key takeaways from the Common Sense Census on media use by tweens and teens. And with that, on with the show. All right, well, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. I'm so excited to be doing another episode, and I'm really excited that I'm doing an episode with Chris Butler. Hello, Chris. Yay!
Hey, how you doing?
We are excited to announce that Chris is going to be joining the Shifting Our Schools team and helping me out with rounding up people to talk to and holding conversations and interviewing other teachers so that we can just bring more content to the 7.3 million people. I mean, 5 people that, however many people listen to this podcast.
I love it. Yep.
Yeah. So welcome, Chris. You've been on the podcast before. It was back.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look. I don't remember what episode it was, but Yeah, we had you on, and I was on your podcast back in the day. So
Yeah.
awesome, welcome. Well, why don't you introduce
Thank you.
yourself
Yeah.
if people haven't heard from you or know anything about you?
Okay.
Kind of give yourself a quick introduction.
All right, cool. Yeah. So Chris Butler, super excited to be with you, Jeff, on the podcast. I am, so I've been in education now for, I always lose track of this, somewhere around 24 years. I was,
Does that include after you graduated high school, or
stop
like
it. Yes.
it's 43
Yeah,
years if you're my age? I've been in education 43 years.
yeah. As a professional being
Yeah,
paid.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like to call myself a reformed English teacher. I'm an instructional technology coach now, taught English language arts for 17 years. Grew up in the Yakima Valley, went off to school at WSU, Washington State University, go Cougs. Came back to teach in the Valley in Prosser, taught there for 17 years or so. Found my way after that, ended up in the Richland School District in Southeast Washington. Taught English for a couple years there, and then worked my way into a instructional technology coach role. And I kind of have Jeff, I have you to thank for this a little bit. I don't even know if you remember this, but it was a conference at NCCE a few years back, 8 years back or so. And I sat in one of your sessions, and you kept mentioning and talking about the role of the importance of having an instructional technology coach in the building, in the district, that sort of thing. And we didn't have that in our district, and we were just started to move to a one-to-one. We were starting to roll out a one-to-one plan to Chromebooks. And so I kind of took this idea and I rolled with it, and I did a bunch of research, and I created a job description and kind of a 5-year plan. And I presented this to my administration, and they said, hold up, let's call the people that we need to call, and kind of got that ball rolling. It turned out that the district had been thinking along the same lines. And so that following year, I became an instructional technology coach in the district.
That reminds me, my first tech coaching job, I wrote my own description too.
Oh,
like the superintendent's like, what would you do? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, well, you need to write up something. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So when I went out online and found job descriptions from all these different districts and kind of put them all together and what works for us.
And you copy and paste the best things, right? You're just
Absolutely,
like, ooh, that looks like fun.
Yeah. I want to do that. Yeah.
Cool.
So did that for 4 years in the district. Was part of the one-to-one rollout. Got to help teachers move to this one-to-one environment and start to use technologies in the best possible way that they could. And then just this last year, so I did that 4 years in Richland, and then just this last year, so this school year now, I got moved to Hood River, Oregon, and I'm the district instructional technology coach here, doing the same thing I was, but on a bigger scale. In Richland, it was more building-based, with a little bit kind of district-wide. Now it's very much district-wide.
And how big's your district? How big you talking?
The district is, so it's a county-wide school district. So there's one high school, there's 2 middle schools, there's 5 elementary schools in one town of Hood River, which is about probably 7,000 people in the winter, about 20,000 people in the summer because all tourists. So it's a smaller school district, but it's got, I don't even know the number of kids, to be honest with you. The high school's 1,200 to 1,500.
Okay.
So it's a substantial district, not nearly as big as Richland was.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But it's a change because it's more, I'm the guy, like I'm
the person,
the guy. Yeah. So I'm finally found my way just above water. I'm treading water now. So, but it's been a good challenge for me.
Good. And are you one-to-one there? Are they rolling out one-to-one?
We are one-to-one, middle school to high school. We're iPads.
Okay.
And then elementary school is about 2-to-1.
Okay. And Google School, Microsoft?
Google.
So iPads with Google Apps.
iPads with Google Apps, yeah.
And you are a Google certified trainer. So we're both certified trainers.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to have some help and some co-hosting opportunities and just having somebody to help kind of lead conversations and stuff. And along with all of your contacts to get people on that we can talk about.
Right.
I'm constantly complaining here on Shifting Our Schools that teachers love it when I talk to other teachers, but I need other teachers to
I
talk
know,
to.
right.
That's always the problem. So,
Well, and that's what I'm super
excited.
excited about too, is
Yeah.
being able to bring in, I have my contacts, like you said, and I had my podcast that I had for a while too. And so some of our guests, if you migrated with me from Project Base Awesome podcast to the Shifting Our Schools podcast here, we might have some of the same
conversations.
guests,
Yeah.
but same people new. Yeah. So
cool.
But yeah, I'm excited. It'll be fun.
That's awesome. I'm excited about that. And I'm excited that our conversation today is going to be this new report that was just released by Common Sense Media. So I got home today and I was setting up for this interview, or for us to have a chat. It wasn't even an interview, for us to have a chat today. And I was just like, oh man, what are we going to talk about? What are some things that are on my mind? And all of a sudden in my email box pops the latest edition of the Common Sense Media has just released the 2019 Common Sense Census Media Use by Tweens and Teens. And the last time that Common Sense has done this big census where they go around, and I haven't read it, so I'm not sure what their methodology is yet, and I haven't dug in, but they basically go out and they look for data on how are teens using technology. And I thought, what a great opportunity on this thing that literally just landed in my inbox, and I'll make sure it's in our show notes so that other people can, because if you're a tech coach or you're a principal or in any role like that, reports like this, I think they just really help us, understand the kids that are in our classroom today. And if you've been here on Shifting Our Schools with me, you understand that's a big passion of mine, is really learning how to respect and understand the kids that are in our classroom today. So I'm just, so we're just kind of going through this in real time, because we have neither one of us. I just literally shared it with Chris like 5 minutes before we started recording. We're like, let's talk about this.
I'm digging in right now.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. So just real quick, it's a national representation they surveyed more than 1,600 students, ages 8 through 18 years old. And so they've broken them down into two groups, which I think is really interesting. So they're calling the tweens 8 to 12-year-olds. So between the ages of 8 and 12 are their tween age group. And then between the ages of 13 and 18-year-olds are their teenage group. And I really like it that they broke it down this way because it really looks at, it's kind of fascinating, like just the little stuff I've looked at, and we're going to dig into this, but how some of the things, there's very little difference between those age groups. And then other things, there's a significant difference on how kids are using tech.
Yeah.
The great thing is this is the second time that Common Sense has done this. So the last time they did this report was in 2015. So it also gives us some comparable data between 15 and 19 on what are some things that have changed with the way that tweens and teens are using technology. So I thought maybe we would just go through the key findings and we can just kind of chat about these and just kind of like, does that make sense? Is that what we're seeing? Does that surprise us? I mean, I think some of the stuff we're just gonna be like, yeah, that sounds like it.
Yeah, right.
So that sounds good to you. So let's start here with number one. The first key finding they found is, on average, 8 through 12-year-olds in the United States use just under 5 hours worth of entertainment screen media per day. So it came out to 4 hours and 44 minutes. And teens use an average of just under 7.5 hours, so 7 hours and 22 minutes, not including time spent on screens for school or homework. What are your thoughts on that? Almost 7.5 hours on a screen, and that doesn't include school or homework.
Right. It's a big number, and it's unfortunately it's not really surprising to me. And this is one of the big concerns, I guess, that as an instructional tech coach, and I know you've heard it, working with teachers and working with parents, is screen time.
Yeah.
And it's like 7.5 hours, and not including homework. So if you think about the time that as districts, as schools are moving to more one-to-one models and having kids do work on devices, that's adding to that amount of screen time, which I'm not a parent, but as a parent, I can see the concern in that. Now, I know we've talked, and I've mentioned this before when we worked together. I'm a firm believer that there's a difference between screen time, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, screen time and screen time, right?
Yeah.
And so if you think of screen time as just passive, I'm sitting here watching cat videos and doing 7.5 hours of that, then yeah, that's probably not the best use of screen time.
That's
right?
alarming. Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. And I think the same thing. Like when I'm reading this, I'm thinking, okay, it's this kind of data is the reason why when we're using technology in schools, we really need to think about, is it a good use of, to your point, screen time, right? That there's a difference between screen time and screen time.
Right.
And how do we make sure that if we're going to put a screen in front of students in a school, that we're using it in a really authentic way that's adding value? And it's not just putting more eyeballs on a screen because it's easy or it's, I don't know, AKA better,
Right.
or it's flashcards and more entertaining. Like the last thing I need is more entertainment on a kid's screen, right?
Right.
So, and I think that's what I take away from this is like, and it says this is entertainment screen media.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
So to be thinking about that these kids are watching 7.5 hours. So I'm trying to think of that. That is the average school day, 7 hours long.
Yeah.
And they're watching another 7 hours within that. That's 14 hours of your day. Right? That's just incredible when you think about that.
And that's just average. I mean,
yeah.
So there's a lot of kids watching more than that.
Yes. Yeah. And looking at their little graph here, it looks like there are 29% of students said that they actually watch more than 8 hours of screen time per day on teens, right? With the tweens, so between the ages of 8 and 12, the majority of kids were either the majority of kids, 26% at 2 hours or less, which are probably those parents that have some kind of monitoring, or making kids get off. And then the other one is 26% are 4 to 8 hours a day. That's pretty incredible.
That is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a good spot. I think that's a good place to start this is just, how do we make sure that if we're going to put student eyeballs on screens, that we're using technology in really, authentic, relevant ways in the classroom?
Right.
We don't want, when we go one-to-one, we are not saying we want kids on screens all day. That is not the reason.
Right.
And I think that just anytime we can just make sure that it's authentic and purposeful, we're doing kids a favor.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the second key finding then is online video viewing is through the roof. More than twice as many young people watch videos every day than did in 2015. And the average time spent watching has roughly doubled. So looking at the graph here, we're showing that this is an interesting one to me. So they're showing for tweens, so between the ages of 8 and 12, they have two different bar graphs. They have enjoy a lot and watch every day. So how much do you enjoy watching video? And how much do you watch video? So how much do you enjoy it and how much do you watch it? So what they're saying is between the ages of 8 and 12, 67% of students say that they enjoy it a lot. And 56% of those between the ages of 8 and 12 are watching videos every day. So that's almost over half of students surveyed said they're watching every day. They're watching online video.
Yeah.
Now you get to the teens, and it's interesting because enjoy it a lot actually decreases to 58%, but watch video every day goes up to almost 70%. 69% of students say they watch video every day between the ages of 13 and 18. That's interesting. That's quite the jump. We go 56% by age 8 to 12 to 69% between the ages of 13 and 18.
Yeah. And I'm digging in here a little bit more and looking at some specific things. So it says that watching videos now comes second only in enjoyment, topped only by listening to music, but it beats out video games, TV, and social media.
Wow.
And so those are really interesting to me because maybe not the TV, because I knew TV was
on the way out.
On the way out.
Yeah.
But video games and social media now, watching videos is the number one.
The number one thing we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it, it's really interesting working with kids and seeing this, and YouTube is so popular now, and they all want to be on YouTube and watch YouTube videos.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
You see these kids watching so the thing with the video games, right? Instead of playing video games, they'll watch people play video games.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that I can learn to be better in my video game.
Yes, right.
I'm learning here, people. Leave me alone. I like this too. It says, despite the fact that YouTube says it's only for those of age 13 or older, 76% of 8 through 12-year-olds say they use the site. By comparison, only 23% say they watch YouTube Kids.
Yeah.
And then we complain that they are exposed to things they're not supposed to.
Right.
When that stuff, I'm going to guess, the most of that is outside of school.
Right? I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. 53% of 8 through 12-year-olds said YouTube is the site they watch the most, compared to just 7% of YouTube Kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But to your point, I think a lot of times we see kids on, this doesn't come as a surprise, I don't think, to any teachers, but the idea that it's more popular than social media, I think this generation gets a bad rap sometimes for being in social media all the time.
Yeah.
And they're in it a lot. I'm not excusing that.
Sure.
But that watching video for entertainment, or like you were saying, for learning purposes, really is what they're doing. I wonder how much. I wonder how much of the time they're watching video is for learning, like you were saying, watching other people play video games, or watching people do hairstyles, or watching people put on makeup. There are YouTube celebrities in all these little categories.
Absolutely.
I just wonder how much of that time is truly entertainment versus how much of it's like some type of learning process that they're watching the videos for. It'd be really interesting to see that.
That would be interesting. And I think that's a great point. I think, and you brought this up, I know the fact that YouTube is the number one search engine for, what is it, 13, 18?
Under the age of 35.
Under the age of 35.
Yeah, that was a Pew Internet research came out with that one. So yeah. So it's just incredible.
Yeah.
The next one I think it relates to that, and it's not that big. So the third finding was there's been a large drop in the amount of time both tweens and teens spend watching TV on a television set. And I think we've seen that across society. It'd be really interesting to look at these numbers, even outside, like what is it for 20-year-olds? What is it for 30-year-olds? I bet we're seeing a decrease at every group, every age group.
I would think so. Yeah.
I would think so too. I think TV is just on the way out.
Yeah.
But it's showing, just for you, if you're listening along, they're saying that the amount of TV viewing in 2015, 48% of students said that they were watching on a television set, and that's down to 24%, which is just crazy. Mm-hmm. That's live TV. Right? Well, TV shifted, and on-demand devices is both, of course, skyrocketed. So
yeah. Well, and I wonder even if part of it is just the term television, TV.
Yeah, that's so true.
Because they're on their devices and they watch streaming video, but they watch it on a tablet or their phone or something like that. So
true.
Yeah.
So these next two I think are really interesting, and it doesn't shock me. I'm just glad that the information I've been telling teachers is actually now backed up by research. The research I was using was talking to teachers, what teachers were telling me.
Right.
But number 4 here, the fourth finding is by age 11, the majority, 53% of kids have their own smartphone.
Yeah.
And this is the crazy part. By age 12, so that's basically from 5th grade to 6th grade, by age 12, more than 2/3, more than 69%, almost 70% of kids said they have a cell phone by age 12.
Yeah.
So it goes up by, what is that? That's like 16% difference in 1 year.
In 1 year.
Isn't that incredible? But
Yeah.
you look at the graph. They've got a great graph when anybody else downloads this. We're showing, like I've always told teachers what I have found, and this is just like talking to teachers all around the world, is basically what I see is second grade is 20%, third grade is 30%, fourth grade is 40%, and that's almost like you look at the graph here, it's almost right there.
It's almost right on. Yeah.
Yeah. So like by the time you're 10, which is fourth grade, it's at 36%. So it's roughly, where in 2015 it was at 19%.
And I think that for me, those numbers are the ones that are most shocking to me.
Yeah.
The jumps in the last 4 years. So
just in 4 years, look at that.
10-year-olds, in 2015, 19% owned a smartphone. Now it's 36%. I mean, that's just the jumps are huge.
Yeah. Look at age 12.
Yeah. 41 to 69%.
Yeah.
Wow.
Almost a 30%, almost a 30% jump.
Yeah.
In 4 years.
In 4 years.
Wow. And then at age 18, it's jumped from 77% to 91%, which basically by the time you're 18, we're looking at, the majority of kids having devices.
Yeah.
And just what is that doing? When 20% of your 8-year-olds have their own device,
right?
How are we teaching the classroom? How are we teaching and changing the classroom?
Yeah.
Key finding number 5, there are substantial differences in the amount of screen media young people use based on social economic status. So we're looking at the social economic status of what people are actually doing. So smartphone ownership. So tweens, I'm trying to read this graph here, see if you understand this. So tweens from higher income homes use an hour and 50 minutes less screen time than those that come from lower income homes.
So, okay, so this is saying that, so that students from a lower income home use screen time more.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think that is really interesting. That I don't think for many of us, we think of it that way. And just the note here is lower income is less than $35,000 a year.
Okay.
Higher income is more than $100,000 per year. But those students who are coming from household, and just to kind of put that in perspective, I think that, and I can look it up real quick, but I want to say the average household income average, before I say something, average household income in America right now is, I wanted to say, I was wrong, 49,851. So the average is 50,000. The average.
Okay.
So you're looking at low income being under 35,000 is spending in tweens between the ages of 8 and 12, spend almost 6 hours on screen media versus those in high income are 4 hours. Wow.
That surprises me.
Almost 2 hours. They're almost spending 2 hours more time.
And then 4 to 7, 6 to 8. Yeah, so it's pretty. I'm looking at the difference between the tweens and the teens, and the difference is pretty much the same.
Yeah, pretty much the same. About 2 hours.
Yeah.
So here we have low income kids who are already struggling.
Right.
They're coming from households that are struggling, but it is showing that they are just as connected as far as having access to media.
Yeah.
And not only do they have access to media, they're actually watching more media than those that are coming from higher incomes, which is what we've seen. There's other studies out there that are showing this exact same thing, that we are seeing in the household, we are seeing those that are coming from a low socioeconomic status actually having more connected houses than those that are coming from middle and upper class, because the middle and upper class are starting to, quote unquote, shun the connection, right? Or starting to understand we want balance, whatever that means.
Right.
And it's really interesting that these figures are showing that too, that it's our younger student or our students that are coming from poverty that we might need to be most concerned about spending more time on screens.
Yeah.
and an entertainment factor. So just something to think about.
Yeah, I know, that's interesting.
Finding number 6, the amount of time devoted to social media has remained steady, while the age of which young people first start using social media varies widely.
Yes.
How great is that?
Right. So among 16 to 18-year-olds who use social media, the median age is first use is 14.
Wow.
28% say they started before the age of 13.
So almost 30% of kids are saying, oh, we didn't wait for that 13 and older thing.
Yeah. No, that's 43% at 13 or 14 years old, and then 30% not until they were 15 or older. This is...
Wow. African American teens enjoy using social media more than white teens do. 51% enjoy it a lot, compared to 37% of whites, Hispanic, Latino, and Hispanic, Latino are in between at 43%. Wow.
That's interesting.
I've never thought about looking at the use of social media based on ethnicity.
No. Is it?
Hispanic Latinos devote an average of 2 hours and 23 minutes a day. African Americans, 2 hours and 15 minutes a day. And white students, 1 hour and 35 minutes a day on social media.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I've never thought about breaking it down that way.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. So if you're in a school that has a high Latino or a high African American population, what are the different conversations we have to be having? Or what conversations do you have in a class, and the different ways that those different ethnicity or those different racial groups actually use social media? I wonder if they use it in different ways too.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. And I'm just thinking in broad strokes here of the ways they use social media. And I was going back to an earlier, the breaking down between watching video and versus social media and that sort of thing. And that video is more popular now than social media in the kids' minds. But I think they use it differently than older, like we do. Like we'll spend a substantial amount of time buried in Facebook or buried in Instagram, right? Just digging through and like, oh, look at this post, and like, and they'll pop in, do their thing, and pop back out.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So I don't know. I don't know if there's any significance to that in this finding, but it's just an interesting way to think in terms of how they use social media.
Yeah.
But you're right. I like the fact that as educators, we need to think about, what does this mean? Like, what are the implications in our classes? What are the implications with our students? How do we use this knowledge in education? How do we, talk to our kids? And, that's important things for us to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's cool. The seventh finding here is one that I'm constantly thinking about. When I love your idea of the difference between, screen time and screen time. But number 7 here, the 7th finding is, despite the new affordance and promises of digital devices, young people devote very little time to creating their own content. I mean, this goes to what the research shows, right? Like, kids are spending 7 hours consuming, very little time creating.
Right.
That when you go one-to-one, we are putting this powerful creative device in the hands of students. How are we helping kids become creators with technology? That needs to be focus of schools.
Absolutely. And I think this makes it even more important than, like, we always knew, like I always knew it was important. We need to have students creating, but this report is just driving home this idea to me even more, because they're not doing it at home. They're not a few are. I mean, a few are creating videos, but the majority are just using it as a passive entertainment source. So in our classes, when we're working with teachers, when we're working with kids, we need to have the students creating. We need to get them out of that being a passive learner.
Yeah, right. Thanks.
and and actively engaged in doing
Yeah.
things. And I think it's more important now than ever before.
Yeah. And the report, when other people download the report and read it, you can go through this and read it. It kind of breaks it down. But really what it's saying is that just 2% of tweens, when they kind of break it down, it's about 2% that are actively creating something, creating video, creating music. So you think about that we've got all this access devices, we got kids on these devices, yet only 2% are actively creating with it. And I think that's something that I'm always trying to push in my trainings is how do we get kids to create with technology?
Yeah.
The last thing I want is kids watching YouTube videos for entertainment in a classroom or going through something where, we're sticking them on screens because it's easy for us.
Right. Yeah.
How do we get them to create?
Yeah.
It's just, that's what we want. This is a good one too. Finding number 8, boys and girls have vastly different taste in media. So it breaks it then down by gender. So in 2019, this is pretty interesting. We're seeing 73% of girls listen to music, while 59% of boys. But online videos, more boys. 67% of boys are watching online video, while 56% of girls. Social media is a girl thing, 50%. And 32% of boys. TV, like watching TV, is pretty standard, or watching on video on your devices.
Yeah.
38 and 43. Reading, 36 for girls, 25 for boys. Mobile gaming, boys 48, girls 35. Video games, check that out.
It's a big difference.
70% of boys say they're playing video games, while only 23% of girls.
Wow.
So I wonder what that's like, with the push to gamify the classroom.
Yeah.
I wonder what girls feeling about that. I don't know.
Yeah. Do they respond as favorably to that?
Yeah. Do they get it?
Yeah.
Like I mean, I know they get it, but do you get is it as engaging? I don't know. Be interesting.
Yeah.
And computer games, 42% boys, 20% girls say they play computer games.
Yeah.
So you kind of break this down, and you have girls who listen to music. And again, this is just in this report, but girls listen to music. They're on social media. They're watching video. They're reading on devices.
Yeah.
And boys are watching online videos, watching other kids play games, right, on their videos. They are mobile gaming, video gaming, computer gaming.
Yeah.
So
nothing there super surprising to me.
Yeah, I would agree.
The disparity, I guess, the difference between boys 70% video games and 20% for girls is huge. But I don't know if it's super surprising to me, but I think it, like you mentioned, it could play a part in like the gamification of schools. That might be something we're gonna have Tisha Richmond on. Little plug. We're gonna have Tisha Richmond on in a few weeks with us, and she is big into the gamification world. So that might be something we could ask her. If she knows the difference.
Yeah, that'd be a good question. And the thing I find interesting is when they break this down, like I just want to know, what do they define? And again, I haven't read the research, and I'm sure they do define this, but because if you look at mobile gaming, they're only about 10% apart, but video gaming, they're this major thing. So, because I was reading another report that basically was showing that boys and girls were almost exactly the same when it came to gaming, but it probably depends on, I don't know how they break down what's the difference between mobile gaming, video gaming, and computer gaming.
Right.
Like, is video gaming on a video console, like an Xbox? I wonder if that's what they mean. Like,
that might
Xbox
be it.
or a PlayStation or something, versus mobile gaming being on your phone.
Yeah, that must be it. That
must be what they must do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, finding number 9. Young people are more than twice as likely as they were 4 years ago to say that they use computers for homework every day. Right? So we're seeing this massive increase in students using computers for homework. And I think that just shows where we are in education.
Yeah.
So 27% of tweens use computers for homework every day. So do nearly 6 in 10, 60% of teens. That's a substantial increase from the last 4 years when only 11% of tweens and 30% of teens said they used computers for homework every day. So we've gone from 11% to 27% and 29% to 59%.
Yeah.
On average, teens spend 41 minutes a day doing homework on computers in 12 minutes, a 12-minute increase from 2015.
Okay.
Wow, so 41 minutes doing homework and 7 hours and 22 minutes for entertainment. Wow.
That's a big difference.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. I wish there was a way for them to break this. Wish they would have broken this down further somehow.
Yeah.
To say, like, what were they doing as far as homework on the computer? Were they doing research? Were they writing a paper? Were they, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as that, just the big difference from that, just watching videos to this, that's just incredible.
Yeah. I love this one. The finding number 10 says the digital divide is still real. And they break it down by laptop ownership among teens. And again, they did a low income, high income. And we've closed the gap. I mean, that's fantastic to see. Let's give ourselves some credit. In 2015, low income students, only 25% had a laptop, while 62% of high income people had a laptop. And now it's actually dropped for high income. It's down to 54%, but we're up to 36%. So there still is a gap for sure.
Yeah.
But that right there is the reason why I think we have to go one-to-one.
That was exactly my thinking. This shows that we need to, it's an equity issue.
It's an equity issue.
Yes. Yeah.
I 100% agree. And that is every school I'm working with when they're like, why do you go one-to-one? I'm like, because it's an equity issue.
It's an equity issue. Yeah.
I mean, at this day and age, we need every kid to have a level playing field and have the same access to information.
Yeah. So a little bit of a tangent here, Jeff. So I have some teachers that I work with that, they agree completely. Like, it's an equity issue. We need to get the hands and devices of our kids. But there's also a worry about students not having access to Wi-Fi at home. Have you had this conversation with teachers you work with, and what are some districts doing as far as that goes? And
yeah, so I think it's more of an issue. I find it more of an issue in rural districts than in urban districts, because even in urban areas, if kids don't have internet at home, there's usually some place that has free Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Or I have some districts who are partnering with like Sprint or T-Mobile for low-income kids. They'll subsidize a LTE USB, dongle that'll give them Wi-Fi at home. Then rural districts, I'm finding that conversation to be different, because these are kids who literally lives in homes where there is no Wi-Fi, right? There is no connection, and they don't even have a data connection on their phone.
Right.
So it's one of the things where, I've seen some school districts that are saying this is why we have to go Microsoft, because we want the app on the devices. So, you have Word on the device, you have PowerPoint, because we can't rely on Google apps that, run on the internet. And then you have those that have gone Google that say, well, we're going to teach every student how to take their stuff offline.
Yeah.
Right. And so you can do offline mode, and it works quite well. So I think those are the two ways that I'm seeing most districts work around that. But I don't think we can use it as an excuse not to go one-to-one.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, what percentage of your student body doesn't have internet and Wi-Fi at home?
Yeah.
And if that is a really small percentage, like if we're talking 1 or 2%, we can find a way to support 1 or 2%, but
Right.
don't handicap every kid because 1 or 2%. I mean, those kids are already handicapped. I mean, the data
Right,
shows
right.
the kids are already handicapped.
Yeah.
By giving
Yeah.
them a device, we're at least helping them out that way, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are you finding? What are you noticing? Like even in your school district, you must have some kids that are out and about.
We do, because it being a countywide school district, and we have a couple communities that are up the hill, up towards the mountain, that are very, the demographics flip basically, and they become more, well, they're a lot of migrant farm families,
Yeah.
and a lot of lower income families, and so
Okay.
we're seeing that at those schools. And those schools are, so what's interesting is, and this is another conversation probably for another time, I know I've had it a few times, our middle schools are not what I would consider a true one-to-one, because they don't take the devices home.
Yeah.
And so that's a whole other discussion, but so it's kind of a wash in that case, since the elementary kids are 2-to-1 and the middle schools don't take the devices home, then it doesn't really, if they don't have Wi-Fi at home, internet access at home, then it's not really an issue as far as the work they need to do, because they don't have the devices at home anyway. So what can teachers expect them to do? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Now I have my own thoughts about that, and you know that, but you know, I saw it even in my last district, which is the different demographics were definitely different. A lot more upper middle class families, but we had a few families in the community that didn't have access, and we were working on ways to help them out with that. But it was also less. It was more of a city type. They had access to other places. They could go
Other
to
places,
the library or whatever.
The coffee shop down the street, or
right.
There was a way to get access if you wanted it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Are your schools in Hood River? Do your schools have public Wi-Fi that kids can go to? Because I know that's some things that school districts are doing.
Yes, but I don't know how robust it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know how far the access goes outside of the buildings.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
The number 11. So 2 more findings. Number 11, nearly a third, 32% of all teens in this country say they read for pleasure less than once a month, if at all. I just want to know, what is that? I understand the concern for that. I'm not saying that is not a concern, but I'm also interested to see, how does that compare to adults? How does that compare to other generations as well? I just wonder if we as humans in America are just not reading a lot, and that is just filtering down. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And exactly the same thought came to my mind. And what are they considering reading for pleasure? Like, a novel.
Exactly.
What? Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, interesting. 15% of teens say they never read for pleasure. 13% of tweens. Oh, I don't know. I have my own feelings about that too. As much as we try to force different types of reading that is not tailored to that student in school.
Right.
I wouldn't want to go home and read for pleasure. You just made me read a book that I'm not really interested in. It's enough reading for the day.
Yeah, exactly. I'm done with that.
I'm done with that for the day. So
yeah.
The last one is the 12th finding is a vast majority of young people don't use tools to track their screen time, nor do their parents. Wow.
Now I know this the screen time tracking tools have just in the last few years become more of a thing, right? They weren't really, people didn't use them very much, but because screen time now is becoming a concern on so many people's parts, like I know, like my iPhone has the screen time
app
tracking and all that kind of thing, right?
My Pixel has the well-being app.
Yeah. And I dig into that a little bit just to see what I'm doing and that sort of thing. But the biggest thing, and you, when you were reading this, nor do their parents, that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's pretty telling to me.
Yeah. So the data here shows that 15% of those between the ages of 8 and 12 self-monitor the time they spend, and only 12% of teens. And parents, so it has parents monitor child time spent, 28% of tweens and 14% of teens. And then parents monitor what children does, 50% of tweens, 26% of teens. What I would like to do, to your point, Chris, is one of the things I'm constantly trying to help teachers do is have more conversations to build the habit of self-monitoring.
Yeah.
Right, we need to teach this generation. I mean, especially what this report is showing is how much time these kids are spending on screens and on specifically the cell phone or on mobile devices. How are we constantly having conversations with students to self-monitor?
Yeah.
If only 12% of kids between the ages of 13 and 18 are self-monitoring, yet on your phone, you have the app that will self-monitor, or not self-monitor, but that you can use to self-monitor yourself. And I don't want to use it. I don't want to use it so much for students to get in trouble, but I think it's a reflective piece, right? I want you to open that up in class, and let's talk about, we all go down the YouTube rabbit hole.
Sure.
I do too. I open up one video because I want to watch one video, and next thing I know, it's 2 hours later and I'm still watching videos,
Right.
Like we all do that. And just being aware. I think a part of it is just for all of us being aware of what we're doing on devices.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just like any other type of learning. And it's something that we don't do as much as we should in all other types of learning, is that self-reflection, right? It's so important to self-reflect on our learning, where we're at. And this is just another type of learning. Yeah.
So I'm excited to dig in this more. Again, this was just released, and I thought this would be good. We can just kind of walk through it together and kind of a first look at this report. I'm excited to kind of dig in, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more. I love reports like this because when I'm working with teacher, and if you're a tech coach again or a principal out there, here's some real research on what our kids are doing. I think there's some great questions that we can, as educators, use in our conversations with kids. So again, this is the Common Sense Census, media use by Tweens and Teens 2019. I'll make sure there's a link to it in the show notes. You're going to need a Common Sense Media account, which, if you're listening to this, isn't a bad thing to have anyway. Common Sense Media account. It's free, doesn't cost anything, and you get great research like this as well. So thanks for kind of looking at that with me. It's kind of cool to
that's fun.
See what's out there. So tomorrow we're doing another recording. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the people we have lined up here in the coming weeks that you have reached out to? And we talked about Tisha. Tisha's going to be here. What's her book?
Making Learning Magical.
Making Learning Magical. So she's going to be on the podcast here in the future. Who else do we have coming?
We've got Adam Pollock, who is, I connected to him through the other podcast that I did before, the Project Based Awesome podcast. He was, he just started listening, and we started a group. Actually, we started a Voxer group. A couple of our listeners, Aaron's and I, had listeners in Michigan, and they started a Voxer group just to kind of talk shop with all of us, and Adam jumped in. And he is teaching overseas in China, actually, so that's kind of why the time frame is a little awkward for us to get this put together. But so he's going to join us, which we're going to have that interview tomorrow afternoon, which will be Thursday morning for him. Cool. But he's doing some really cool stuff at his school, and so he's going to talk about that.
I'm excited.
Yeah. I just got confirmation. Erin's going to come on.
Oh, awesome.
She wants to join us again.
Oh, good.
She's great. Yeah. So Erin Dickey, who was my old partner in the project-based awesome stuff, and I taught with her in Richland, and she's a instructional technology coach now, was a teacher before when we talked to her, so she'll have a new
great, a new lens.
Yeah, new lens. So we have, let me think, who else do we have? Have a couple other teachers that I've worked with in the past that they haven't confirmed yet. They've expressed interest. They want to do it. We're just trying to nail down a time, but they're doing a co-teaching model, kind of a team teaching model.
Cool.
So it'll be interesting to talk to them about kind of what they're doing and what it looks like and how it works and that sort of thing. So
very cool. And again, just a reminder to anybody, if you'd like to come on and have conversations, every teacher is doing great stuff in their classroom. We are more than happy to have you come on. You can reach out either to Chris and I. The easiest way to do it is to head over to Shifting Our Schools, sospodcast.org is the website. There's a contact form there. Or you can leave us a Flipgrid response, and anytime we get one of those, we put those in the podcast as well. So, well, Chris, it was great chatting with you, going through the census stuff, and we'll be hearing more about you in every episode to come. So this
absolutely, I'm excited, Jeff.
All right, man.
Fun. All right. Okay. All right.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit sospodcast.org, facebook.com/Jeff Udick, and on Twitter @JUdick. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Shifting Our Schools.